The Riverside Country Club's terrace overlooked manicured golf courses that stretched toward the horizon like an emerald ocean. Crystal chandeliers hung from the covered patio, catching the late morning sun and scattering rainbow light across white tablecloths. 75 guests filled the space, all dressed in their country club finest, celebrating my father's 65th birthday with mimosas and imported caviar. I sat at the family table wearing a cotton sundress I'd bought 3 years ago at a department store sale. $28 if I remembered correctly. My sister Natalie sat across from me in head-to-toe Dior, her jewelry probably worth more than most people's cars. My brother-in-law Richard was beside her in his custom Italian suit, checking his Rolex every few minutes like he had somewhere more important to be. My brother Trevor occupied the seat to Dad's right, wearing Armani and that smug expression he'd perfected over 33 years of being the golden child. His wife Jessica sparkled with diamonds, showing off her recent push present, a tennis bracelet worth 6 figures for delivering their second child. Dad held court at the head of the table in his country club blazer, basking in the attention of successful children who'd followed in his footsteps. He'd built Blackwood Financial into a powerhouse investment firm, and Trevor had joined him straight out of business school. They managed portfolios for the ultra-wealthy, the kind of money that required face-to-face meetings and handshake deals on golf courses. And then there was me, Gabriella Blackwood, the daughter who'd disappointed everyone by becoming a travel blogger. "Gabriella, darling," Mom said from Dad's left side, her voice carrying that particular tone of forced cheerfulness she used when addressing me in public. "You're so quiet. Did the flight tire you out?" Every head at nearby tables turned slightly. My family had perfected the art of public humiliation disguised as concern. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, taking a bite of my Eggs Benedict. "Just enjoying the food." "Of course you are," Natalie said with a smile sharp as broken glass. "This must be quite a step up from your usual meals. What do travel bloggers eat? Airport food court cuisine? Hostel cafeteria specials?" Polite laughter rippled around the table. I continued eating. "Now, Natalie," Dad said, but his tone carried more amusement than reproof. "Your sister has chosen an unconventional path. We should be supportive even if we don't understand it." "Unconventional," Trevor snorted into his mimosa. "Is that what we're calling it?" "I'd call it financially irresponsible, but sure, let's go with unconventional." "Trevor," Mom said softly, though she was smiling, "be kind to your sister." "I am being kind," he protested. "I'm just stating facts. Gabby's been finding herself, through travel for 7 years now? Living out of a backpack, staying in budget hotels, writing little blog posts about street food and hiking trails. Someone has to document the authentic travel experience," I said mildly. "The authentic experience," Natalie repeated, making air quotes. "Gabby, you're 30 years old. When are you going to get a real job? Join the real world." "I have a job," I said. "Writing a blog that 12 people read." Richard joined in, laughing. "That's adorable. Do you make enough to cover your web hosting fees?" The table erupted in laughter. Even Mom chuckled behind her hand. I set down my fork carefully and took a sip of orange juice. Not a mimosa. Just juice. Because apparently that detail mattered to them too. "Actually," Jessica said, leaning forward with false sweetness, "I tried to find your blog last week. Wandering Gabby, right? The design is very basic. Very 2010. Have you considered updating it? Maybe taking a web design course?" "I'll keep that in mind," I said. "You should also consider your carbon footprint," Natalie added, warming to her theme. "All that flying around on budget airlines, contributing to climate change just so you can write blog posts nobody reads. It's quite selfish, really." "Budget airlines," Trevor echoed, grinning. "Remember when she posted that photo from inside a plane? The seats looked like they were from 1985. I showed everyone at the office. We had a good laugh." "You probably flew here on one of those discount carriers," Natalie continued. "What was it, Spirit? Frontier? One of those airlines where they charge you extra just to breathe." The whole table laughed at that. Dad was actually wiping tears from his eyes. "Natalie, that's enough," Mom said, but she was still smiling. "Though, sweetheart," she turned to me, "you really should let your father help you with travel expenses. Flying economy at your age is just, well, it's sad." "I manage fine," I said. "Do you though?" Trevor leaned back in his chair, swirling his mimosa. Because I saw your apartment when I was in Seattle last year. That studio in the University District? Gabby, I've seen prison cells with more square footage. It suits my needs, I said simply. Your needs are clearly very minimal, Richard observed. Which I suppose is fortunate given your income level. Dad cleared his throat, getting ready to make one of his pronouncements. Gabriella, your mother and I have discussed this extensively. We're worried about you. This travel blogging hobby has been charming, but it's time to think about your future. Your real future, Mom added. Not this fantasy of being a digital nomad or whatever you call it. Trevor's offered you a position at Blackwood Financial multiple times, Dad continued. Entry level, of course. You'd need to prove yourself. But it's a real salary, real benefits, real career trajectory. Unlike whatever it is you're doing now, Trevor added helpfully. I appreciate the offer, I started. She's going to refuse again, Natalie told the table, rolling her eyes. She always refuses. Too proud to accept help from her successful family. Too stubborn to admit she's failed. I haven't failed, I said quietly. No. Natalie's voice rose. You're 30 years old with no career, no property, no retirement savings, no investments, nothing. You live in a 400-square-foot studio apartment and fly on airlines that make you pay for carry-on bags. If that's not failure, I don't know what is. You know what the worst part is? Jessica chimed in. She had every advantage. Went to Stanford on Dad's dime. Got a degree in international business. Had job offers from top firms. And she threw it all away to travel around taking selfies. Not selfies, I corrected. Travel content. Oh, I'm sorry, Jessica said mockingly. Travel content. How professional. Do you at least monetize it? Run ads? Sponsored posts? Some, I said. Some, Trevor repeated. Meaning what, you make maybe $200 a month? $300 if you're lucky? Gabby, I make more than that in interest while I'm sleeping. The comparison hung in the air. Trevor's success versus my failure. Natalie's designer wardrobe versus my sale rack dress. Their country club memberships versus my budget airlines and hostels. I just don't understand, Mom said, and for a moment she almost sounded genuinely sad. You had so much potential. You were so smart, so capable. And you've chosen to waste it all on this wandering lifestyle. It's not a waste to me, I said. Because you have no ambition, Natalie said flatly. No drive. You're content to be mediocre. Mediocre might be generous, Richard added. I'd say she's actively choosing poverty. It's not poverty, I protested mildly. You flew here on a budget airline, Natalie said, her voice rising to ensure nearby tables could hear. You probably flew coach. Actually, you probably flew basic economy, the seats that don't even recline. You probably had to check your one pathetic carry-on because you couldn't afford priority boarding. The nearby tables had gone quiet now, guests openly listening to the Blackwood family drama. I bet you had a middle seat, Trevor added, laughing. Squished between two strangers for 5 hours. While normal successful people fly business class at minimum. Business class, Natalie scoffed. Trevor, she can't even afford economy plus. Look at her shoes. Those are from Target. I glanced down at my sandals. They were indeed from Target. Comfortable, practical, and $12 on clearance. This is what I'm talking about, Dad said, his voice taking on that disappointed tone I'd heard for 7 years. Gabriella, you're living like a college student. 30. It's embarrassing. For the whole family, Natalie added. Do you know how awkward it is when my friends ask what you do? Oh, my sister writes a little travel blog, sounds pathetic. You could say I'm a travel writer, I suggested. But you're not a real travel writer, Jessica corrected. Real travel writers work for magazines. They get paid actual salaries. They stay in nice hotels and fly business class. You're just a girl with a WordPress site and a lot of time on her hands. 7 years of time, Richard noted. 7 years of basically nothing to show for it. No assets, no savings, nothing. Just a bunch of photos of street food and temple ruins. Mom reached across the table to pat my hand. Sweetheart, we love you. We do. But we're running out of patience. Your father and I won't be around forever. When we're gone, Trevor and Natalie will have successful careers and financial security. What will you have? Memories. Natalie suggested mockingly. Maybe she can pay her nursing home bills with Instagram likes. The table erupted in laughter again. Even the nearby tables were smiling now, entertained by the public roasting of the Blackwood family failure. I was about to respond when I saw him approaching across the terrace. Captain James Mitchell in his crisp pilot's uniform, complete with the 4 gold stripes on his shoulders that marked him as a captain. He walked with the confident bearing of someone who'd spent 20 years flying for major airlines before I'd recruited him. The conversations around me faded slightly as people noticed the uniformed pilot walking purposefully toward our table. "Miss Blackwood," he said, his voice professional and clear. He stopped directly beside my chair. "I apologize for interrupting your father's celebration, but we have a time-sensitive situation." The entire table had gone silent. Natalie's champagne glass was frozen halfway to her lips. "What is it, Captain Mitchell?" I asked calmly. "Your Gulfstream G700 is ready for departure," he said. "We have our flight window to Monaco, but we need to leave within the next 90 minutes to make your dinner meeting with the Minister of Tourism. The crew has already completed pre-flight and your guests are boarding now." I could feel every eye at the table on me. On nearby tables too. The entire terrace had gone quiet enough to hear champagne bubbles bursting. "Monaco." Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Captain Mitchell continued, professional to his core. "Additionally, Ms. Blackwood, your aircraft manager called. The new Bombardier Global 7500 you ordered will be delivered next month as scheduled. They're asking about your preferred interior configuration for the 3rd aircraft." "3rd aircraft?" Trevor's voice cracked. "Tell them I'll review the options next week," I said calmly. "And Captain, please inform the Monaco crew that I'll be there in 60 minutes. Have the car brought around." "Already waiting at the front entrance, ma'am. Your luggage was transferred from the hotel this morning as requested." "Thank you, Captain." He nodded politely to the table. "Mr. Blackwood, congratulations on your birthday." "Ma'am." He turned and walked back across the terrace with the same confident stride. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear birds chirping in the trees beyond the golf course. Natalie's champagne glass slipped from her hand. It hit the table edge and shattered, sending crystal shards and expensive champagne across the white tablecloth. She didn't even notice. "Did he say?" Mom couldn't finish the sentence. "Gulfstream G700, Richard whispered, his face pale. That's a $75 million aircraft. And she's ordering a 3rd plane," Jessica breathed. I set down my napkin and stood, smoothing my $28 sundress. "I should get going. Don't want to miss my flight window." "Wait," Dad's voice was strangled. "Gabriella. What, how do I own 3 private jets?" I asked pleasantly. "Well, technically the Bombardier isn't delivered yet, so currently I only own 2. But by next month, yes, 3. "That's impossible," Trevor said flatly. "You're a travel blogger." "I am," I agreed. "Among other things." I pulled out my phone and opened an app, then passed it down the table to my father. "That's my company, Wanderlux Global. We own and operate the world's largest luxury travel media and concierge network." Dad took my phone with shaking hands. He stared at the screen. "Revenue, $3.2 billion annually. Net worth, $8.4 billion. The number seemed to echo across the silent terrace. "Billion," Natalie repeated. "With a B. "Your blog," Mom whispered. "Wandering Gabby is the public-facing personal brand," I explained. "The small blog that 12 people read. That's actually followed by 42 million people across all platforms. It's the flagship property of Wanderlux Media, which owns 17 of the top 50 travel websites and social media channels in the world." I took my phone back and pulled up another screen. "We also own Wanderlux Concierge, the luxury travel planning service that books trips for heads of state, celebrities and billionaires. Our client list is completely confidential, but I can tell you we arrange approximately $15 billion in luxury travel annually." $15 billion, Richard breathed. "We also own a fleet of private aircraft that we charter when not in personal use," I continued. "The G700 Captain Mitchell mentioned is my primary aircraft. The Bombardier Global 8000 is for longer international routes. The Global 7500 I just ordered will be for the Asian market expansion. Asian market expansion, Jessica repeated numbly. Oh, and we own hotels, I added. 47 luxury properties in 32 countries. We're opening 12 more next year. You might have stayed at one, the Wanderlux Resort in Maui? The one with the private beaches and the 5-star spa. We stayed there for our honeymoon, Jessica whispered. It cost us $20,000 for the week. Yes, that's one of ours, I said. Glad you enjoyed it. Trevor found his voice, though it came out hoarse. You own billion-dollar companies. Multiple companies. 7 companies actually, all under the Wanderlux Global umbrella, I said. Travel media, luxury concierge services, hotel properties, private aviation, travel technology platforms, sustainable tourism development, and a venture capital fund that invests in travel and hospitality startups. I checked my watch. A simple Timex I'd worn for years because I didn't care about watches. I really do need to go. The Monaco meeting is important. We're finalizing a deal to develop 3 new resort properties on the French Riviera. $200 million investment. 200 million, Dad echoed faintly. Also, I pulled an envelope from my bag and placed it on the table in front of my father. Happy birthday, Dad. That's the deed to the vacation home in Aspen you've been talking about buying for years. 6 bedrooms, ski-in ski-out access, mountain views. I had it fully furnished. The keys are in the envelope along with the property documents. Dad opened the envelope with trembling hands. His eyes widened. This property is listed at $12 million. 11.7, I corrected. I negotiated. Also, I set up a trust to cover all property taxes and maintenance in perpetuity. You'll never have to worry about the costs. Mom was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. Natalie stared at me like I'd grown a second head. But, your apartment, your clothes, the budget airlines. I never said I flew budget airlines, I corrected gently. You assumed. I actually flew here on my G700. I just didn't mention it because you all seemed so committed to your narrative about my poverty. Your studio apartment, Trevor said weakly, is actually the penthouse in a building I own in Seattle, I said. 4,000 square feet, rooftop terrace, Puget Sound views. But I call it a studio because technically the business occupies most of the building and I live in one unit. Seemed simpler than explaining I own a $12 million property. The Target shoes, Jessica whispered, looking at my sandals, are comfortable, I said with a shrug. I also own Louboutins and Manolos. I just don't care about designer shoes. These work fine for brunch. Richard was scrolling frantically on his phone. Wanderlux Global, it's real. She's listed as the founder and CEO. Forbes estimated her net worth at $8.4 billion last year. 8.6 now, I corrected. Good quarter in Q2. The nearby tables had erupted in whispered conversations. The Blackwood family drama had taken a turn no one had expected. Why? Dad's voice cracked. Why build all this in secret? Why let us think you were failing? I looked at him for a long moment. I didn't build it in secret, Dad. I told you 7 years ago I was starting a travel media company. You laughed and said I should stop playing with hobbies and get a real job. He flinched. I invited you to Wanderlux's launch event 5 years ago, I continued. You were too busy. I sent you our first annual report when we hit 100 million in revenue. You never mentioned receiving it. I invited you to our 3-year celebration when we acquired our first hotel property. Trevor sent the invitation back with a note that said he couldn't attend another one of Gobby's little blog parties. Trevor had gone completely white. So I stopped trying, I said simply. I built something extraordinary without your support, your approval, or your belief. And honestly, it was easier without you constantly telling me I was wasting my time. The things we said, Mom whispered. The way we talked about you. You mean the public humiliation? I asked. The constant mockery? The implications that I was a failure and an embarrassment? Yes, I heard all of it. Everyone heard it. I gestured to the nearby tables. You made sure of that. We didn't know, Natalie said, tears forming in her eyes. You didn't ask, I corrected. You assumed. You decided I was a failure because I didn't follow the path you wanted for me. You never once asked about my business. Never asked to see my portfolio. Never asked how I was actually doing. Because you looked like you were struggling, Trevor protested weakly. I looked modest, I said. There's a difference. I don't believe in flashy displays of wealth. I think that's shallow and pointless. But you all decided modest meant poor and poor meant failure and failure meant I deserved your contempt. The words landed like hammer blows. The blog posts Trevor showed everyone at his office, I said. That photo from inside the plane? That was from inside my Gulfstream G800 that I'd just purchased. I was posting about the experience of private aviation for my luxury travel readers. But you assumed it was a budget airline because that fit your narrative better. Trevor put his head in his hands. My basic website design that Jessica criticized, I continued. Wandering Gabby intentionally uses a minimalist design because our 42 million followers prefer clean, easy-to-navigate interfaces. We've won 3 Webby Awards for digital design. But sure, it's very 2010. Jessica was crying now too. And the carbon footprint lecture. I turned to Natalie. Wanderlux Global has offset 100% of our carbon emissions since day one. We've invested over $50 million in sustainable tourism initiatives and renewable energy projects. We're literally the most environmentally responsible company in the travel industry. But thank you for the concern. Natalie's perfectly made-up face was streaked with tears. A sleek black car pulled up to the terrace entrance. My driver, Marcus, stepped out and gave me a subtle nod. That's my car, I said. Time to go. Captain Mitchell doesn't like to miss flight windows, and I respect his professionalism too much to make him wait. Gabriella, please. Dad stood, his voice breaking. Don't leave like this. Let's talk. Really talk. About what? I asked. About how you all spent 7 years publicly humiliating me. About how you made me the family joke. About how you measured my worth entirely by your standards of success and found me wanting. We were wrong, he said. We were so wrong. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. I looked around the table. At Natalie's tear-streaked face. At Trevor's shock. At Mom's genuine anguish. At Jessica and Richard's stunned silence. I know you're sorry, I said quietly. But sorry doesn't undo 7 years of constant put-downs. Sorry doesn't erase all the family gatherings where I was the punchline. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that you were so committed to your image of me as a failure that you never bothered to learn the truth. Let us make it right, Mom pleaded. Please. Come to dinner next week. Tell us about your business. Your life. Everything we missed. I considered it. Part of me, the part that still loved them despite everything, wanted to say yes. Wanted to believe we could fix this. But I also knew the truth. They didn't love me. They loved the idea of me they'd created. And now they loved the idea of claiming a billionaire daughter instead of an embarrassing failure. I'll think about it, I said finally. But right now I have a business to run. A meeting in Monaco. A resort deal to close. A company that employs 3,000 people who depend on me showing up and doing my job. I picked up my worn leather bag, which was actually a vintage Hermes that I'd never bothered to mention. Oh, and Dad. I paused. That entry-level position Trevor keeps offering me at Blackwood Financial? The one where I'd need to prove myself by working under my brother? Blackwood Financial manages about $4 billion in client assets. Wanderlux Global's annual revenue is $3.2 billion. I think I've proven myself just fine. I walked away from the table, across the terrace, past the staring guests, toward the car where Marcus held the door open. As I slid into the back seat, I could hear the explosion of conversation behind me. The Blackwood family trying to process what had just happened. The country club guests already pulling out phones to spread the gossip. Let them talk. Let them process. Let my family wrestle with the fact that they'd spent 7 years mocking someone who was building an empire 10 times larger than anything they'd ever achieved. Marcus pulled away from the country club and I leaned back against the leather seats. My phone buzzed. A text from my CFO. Monaco team confirms meeting moved to 6 p.m. local time. Also, the acquisition talks with Sterling Hotels are ahead of schedule. They want to close by end of month. I typed back, perfect. Prepare the contracts. Another buzz. This time from my head of PR. Forbes is running a feature on Wanderlux's expansion into Africa. They want a quote from you. I sent her the quote, approved 3 media requests and reviewed the preliminary numbers for our Q3 performance, tracking 22% above projections. By the time we reached the private aviation terminal, I'd handled 6 business items and forgotten about the brunch entirely. That's what success actually looked like. Not designer clothes or public displays of wealth. Not putting down your family to feel superior. Not measuring worth by country club memberships. Real success was building something meaningful. Creating jobs. Changing industries. Making an impact. And doing it quietly without needing anyone's permission or approval. Captain Mitchell met me at the aircraft steps. "We're ready when you are, Ms. Blackwood." "Thank you, Captain. Let's get to Monaco." As the G700 lifted off, I looked down at the city below. Somewhere down there my family was still processing. Still trying to reconcile the daughter they'd dismissed with the woman I'd actually become. Maybe we'd have that dinner. Maybe we'd find a way to rebuild. Or maybe they'd just adjust their narrative, turning me from the family failure into the family success story, without ever actually understanding what I'd built or why. Either way, I'd be fine. I had companies to run, deals to close, and an entire world to explore. On my own terms. In my own jets. With my Target sandals and all.